For today's Friday cooking activity, we are going to make roasted pecans for the letter R. They're not candied pecans because they don't have a lot of sugary condensed milk. They're just roasted, but they are sweet. A lot of people call this recipe Texas roasted pecans because, one, pecan tree is the official state tree of Texas. And also, this recipe has a little bit of spice to it, which is really common in Tex-Mex food. So, let's get started. So, we're going to be whipping up some egg whites to make them really fluffy. And then we're going to add in the pecans, and then we're going to add in a nice sugar mixture and roast them in the oven. So your colts can help with almost all of this recipe except for checking on it in the oven. And that's something that we're going to do a few times. But they can help with all the beginning of the recipe. So first we're going to start by making our sugar mixture. We're going to get a random cup. It doesn't really matter what size it is. Mine has Lego movie characters on it. This is going to be our sugar shaker. You might have a special sugar shaker at home that has little holes in it, but I actually just like to use a regular cup. I just kind of shake it like that whenever I put it on the pecans because it gets a lot more out at once and I'm a little lazy. So I kind of just want to do, and then that's it. So we're going to be putting in a 1/4 cup of white sugar. And this is a recipe that I have tweaked a lot. I've made it a lot, and each time I tweak it a little bit. And so the recipe I'm giving you today, I feel like is the best recipe. So 1/4 cup of white sugar and 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And to me, light or dark brown sugar, either is fine. I'm using dark brown sugar today. I am also going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, like so, and I'm gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Honestly, I don't think it's too much. Like, even if you don't really like spicy food, it just gives it a nice little extra kick at the end. It's not very spicy. If you want a really spicy treat, double it and add a 1/2 teaspoon, but I'm only gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon. I really think it's okay. Even my son will eat this. But you can always add less if you want. You could make it like a pinch of cayenne, or even no cayenne, but I really think that cayenne tastes good in this. And now we're going to add some cinnamon. We're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. So that's a 1/2 teaspoon. That's spilled 1 teaspoon and 1/2. So now we have our mixture of sugar and salt and cinnamon and a little bit of cayenne pepper. I'm going to get just a regular spoon and mix it up. You want it to be mixed pretty well. What's really interesting about when you mix it is to watch how the colors change. Because the white sugar is really white and the brown sugar is brown and the cinnamon is usually a little bit darker, kind of red. And then when you mix it together, look at this. It's kind of pretty, right? You've got the white sugar and the dark and they're slightly different textures because the brown sugar is kind of sticky and the cinnamon is very fine. Make sure you get the bottom corners. So I'm just turning my cup to the side and like rotating it like a cement mixer so that I can get all of the sugar at the bottom. Because I'm actually going to use all of this in my recipe. Some people will say, oh, just, add it to as much as you like. You don't have to add it all, but I recommend you add it all. It's not a healthy treat. It's just good. Okay, our sugar mixture is done. And now we're going to whip up our egg whites. Get my big bowl. And my eggs, we don't want the egg yolks, just the egg whites. So I think this is something that we have done before, but we actually only used the egg yolks last time. And this time, we're not using the yolks. Yeah, so my egg whites are gonna go in this big bowl. I'm gonna crack it over here, and then I'm gonna put the egg yolks in the little bowl. But save the egg yolks. You can use it for another recipe, or it's a pretty good hair treatment to wash your hair with egg yolks and then rinse it out really good. Super good for your hair. Okay. There goes the egg whites. But I've got the egg yolk in this. And now I'm gonna put the egg yolk in the other shell. Ready? And keep pouring out those egg whites. If you want, you can just use your fingers. I'll do that for the next one. Uh-oh, the egg yolk cracked. I don't want egg yolk in this because the egg yolks make it hard for the egg whites to whip up. Okay, so this one I'm just gonna use my fingers to show you instead of using the shell. Why is this egg not breaking? I just kind of let the egg white fall through my fingers, and the egg yolk wants to stay together, and it's staying in my hand. I'm gonna put it over here with the other one. Boop. All right, now I'm gonna go wash my hands. And I'm gonna preheat the oven to 225, very low. My oven is preheating now. That's not gonna take very long because it's a really low temperature. So I'm going to now add 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And this isn't one of those cases where I'm gonna add a lot extra. This is my recipe, so I know 1 tablespoon is good. Okay. There we go. And now I'm going to whip it up. So right now our egg whites look like this. You can see the brown vanilla and the clearish, slightly yellowish of the egg whites. And when I whip it up, it's going to look completely different. After I whip it up, it's going to look almost like Cool Whip or like vanilla frosting. It's going to be really fluffy with lots of little tiny bubbles. And whenever you whip egg whites, a lot of times the recipe will say soft peaks or stiff peaks. And that means whenever you take your mixer out of the egg whites, what do the egg whites look like? Do they look like a mountain that's drooping to the side, or are they straight up in the air? So I'll show you what I mean. So you can see here how I have whipped in a bunch of air bubbles into the egg whites. Now, as I keep doing this, it's going to get more and more air bubbles in, and the air bubbles are going to get smaller and smaller. Come look at it now. You see? Now you can see that the egg whites are starting to hold their shape. Watch. Can you see that? That is a very soft peak. I'm going to go for a little bit stiffer peaks. Look at that, very stiff peaks. I think that's ready. Very stiff egg whites. And now we're going to add our pecans. So this is another time where we're going to use folding. So we're not going to mix and mix and mix because we want the egg white bubbles to mostly be intact. So we're just going to fold them in. Here's my pecans. So there's 1 cup. And 2 cups. And a little bit more. All right. So I'm going to fold them in. Pick them up, move them down. Just pick them up, put them down. Just a little bit of folding. I'm going to now add some of my sugar mixture. Not all of it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put these pecans in the oven for 15 minutes. And then we'll pull them out and stir them and sprinkle some more sugar on. And then we're going to put them back in for 15 minutes, pull them out, sprinkle sugar on, stir. And we're going to do that until they have been in the oven for a whole hour. So that means 4 15-minute rounds. So don't use all of your sugar right now. You can use like half of it. So I'm going to sprinkle it on. Here, you guys can watch. Yeah, that's good. And now I'm going to keep folding. It smells really good. It smells like autumn, honestly. These pecans are so fluffy because of the big fluffy egg whites. I think it needs a little more sugar right now. Do. Yeah, let's go. See, it's so fast to just pour it out of the cup. If you don't feel like you have like really good control, maybe use a sugar shaker. I don't think it's necessary. All right, so here's what it looks like. Very tasty. I know it kind of looks like weird slop right now, but it'll be better later. I'm gonna spray my foil. I have foil on my baking sheet. This is one of those recipes where you do want to have foil because it's gonna be really hard to clean your baking sheet. But I'm just gonna spray my foil also. So spray. And then I'm going to evenly put the pecans on the cookie sheet. So there's what the cookie sheet looks like right now. And now I'm going to put the pecans on there. I know it's really weird looking, but as it cooks, the texture completely changes. The fluffy egg whites kind of hold the sugar and cinnamon onto the pecans. So you do want that big fluffy egg whites. So that's what that looks like now. I'm going to put it in the oven for exactly 15 minutes, and then you can come join me as I stir them up and sprinkle more sugar on it. Okay? All right, Colts, it's been 15 minutes, so I'm about to pull out the pecans and give them a stir. What'd you say, Robert?
Hey, Colts, if you hear something go it's just gonna be me playing video games or watching my iPad. Okay?
All right. Okay. So, again, this may be something that you don't want your colt to do. This from here on out is probably stuff just for adults. So you can see our pecans look kind of the same. The egg whites are a little bit deflated looking, and as it goes on, it's going to get more and more deflated looking. So I'm going to give it a stir first. Gotta put my glove back on. Hold on to the foil, or else it's going to just move off of the cookie sheet. So now that I have stirred it, you can see it looks pretty different than it did before. I'm going to sprinkle some sugar on it. And stir it a little bit more before I spread it out. There. So that looks pretty different than it did before, but as it goes on, it's going to get more of that roasted look to it. So I'm going to put it in for another 15 minutes. All right, see you then. Hi, Colts. All right, it has been another 15 minutes, which means it's been half of an hour. So we're gonna pull it out again and stir it again and sprinkle it with sugar. All right, so it looks kind of similar to how it did when we put it back in. Everything's just getting a little more dried out. Hopefully to keep it from getting too stuck on here. In carnivals, whenever you get roasted pecans, I think they stir it like constantly. It's in a big pot and it's just constantly stirring. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna stir it quite often. Now I'm gonna sprinkle some more sugar. Stir it again. The cayenne pepper is really fragrant, but I promise it's not too spicy. All right, that looks pretty spread out. And now we're going to put it back in the oven for another 15 minutes. All right, see you in 15. All right, it has been another 15 minutes, which means in all it's been 45 minutes, which is 3/4 of an hour. So let's see what they look like. All right, looking a little crustier, which is a good thing. So let's stir them up. This is probably a good point to go ahead and finish off your sugar. They were, with the egg whites, they were really sticking to the foil. But now that the egg whites have kind of dried up and they've cooked into the pecans, and I've put the rest of the sugar on there, it should sort of keep it from sticking too much to the foil. It should be fairly easy to scrape it off. If you don't stir your pecans as often, it's going to be a lot harder to scrape off. I'm just trying to get the last of that sugar on all of the pecans. If you see any big chunks, try to break it up. Hopefully, if you've been stirring it well, you won't have big chunks. So now we're going to cook it for our last 15 minutes. But if you did want to test it out and try it, you could have done that after 30 minutes. I think it would have been fine. All right, we will pull those out in another 15 minutes. Okay, our last 15 minutes is done, so it's been cooking for an entire hour. Let's pull it out. There's our roasted pecans. I'm going to give it a stir. Hopefully it should not be sticky. Good. A little sugary. So you can see our pecans are coated in cinnamon and sugar and a little bit of cayenne pepper. Right now they are pretty hot, but when you taste them, yeah, they're pretty soft inside and they're very sweet. A little bit salty, teensy bit spicy, but it's really not very spicy at all. I think that they taste better after they've cooled down, actually, so let's give it another 15 to 30 minutes before we test it again. Hi Colts! Okay, so our pecans have cooled off now, and I started eating them. Now that they're cool, they have like kind of a crunch to it. I just love how it's sweet and salty and just that little extra hint of heat. And that's how you make roasted pecans. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week. And I'll see you Monday, hopefully, if you're coming back. If not, I'll see you later.